Hey everyone, welcome back to Max Reddit Tales. I love bringing you the most jaw-dropping, unforgettable stories, and right now, I've got another one that you won't want to miss. If you're a fan of true revenge stories that leave you absolutely speechless, make sure to hit that like button, and if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss your weekly dose of drama and justice. Alright, grab a snack, get comfy, and let's dive into today's story. Back in the early 2000s, life looked normal on the outside. I had a wife, 2 small kids, and a regular routine. My wife worked part-time, I worked full-time. We had a little home, a backyard, and the kind of busy, tiring days every young family goes through. From the outside, we looked fine, but inside, something felt off. It started small, not even with her, but with our kids. One afternoon, my daughter came home smiling and said, "We went to Grandma's today." I smiled too. It sounded sweet, no reason to question it. But then 2 days later, my son said the same thing. Then it happened again and again, over and over. That's when my brain started ticking. Her parents lived nearly 90 minutes away, one way. That's a 3-hour round trip with 2 little kids. And now they were going there 2 or 3 times a week. On the days she wasn't working? It didn't make sense. Something wasn't right. I asked her casually, pretending not to think much of it. "You've been going to your parents a lot lately, huh?" She paused, just for a second, but it was long enough. She smiled and replied, "Yeah, they miss the kids. I had some free time." It was a smooth answer, too smooth. That pause told me more than her smile did. Something in her tone, her eyes, her body language, it felt fake, like she was hiding something. That night, I lay in bed next to her, staring at the ceiling, wondering how long she'd been lying to me. How many times had I believed her without question? The next morning, I went outside and checked the mileage on her car. I knew the distance from our house to her parents' place. One trip there and back would be around 180 miles. But when I looked at the numbers, she had driven over 400 extra miles that week. My heart dropped. Where had she gone? I didn't say anything, not yet. I needed proof. I didn't want to be that guy who jumped to conclusions and made things worse. But now my eyes were open. Every move she made felt different. Every word she said made me think twice. I watched everything closely. Then came something I'll never forget. One afternoon, she left for work, and I went to sit at the computer. There, next to the keyboard, was a small sticky note. Her AOL password was written on it. Just sitting there, right out in the open, like it was waiting for me. I stared at it. My hands didn't move at first. I knew what logging into her account would mean. Once I saw what was there, there'd be no pretending anymore. But my gut told me something was hidden, and I had to find out what. So I logged in. At first, nothing strange. A few emails from family, junk mail, old messages. But then I found a long chain of emails between her and her college best friend. At first, they were just talking about life, parenting, and old memories. But then I saw something that made my stomach twist. They were joking about someone. A man, her ex from high school. The name came up over and over. And then I saw the words that hit me hardest. "He still thinks I'm with my parents today, LOL. That he was me." Email after email, they laughed about how easy it was to lie. She talked about sneaking off to meet him, about quick motel stops while I was at work. She called his wife boring. She said being bad never felt so exciting. She made fun of the other woman, mocked her weight, her looks, her routine. They talked like it was all just some fun game. Like 2 families weren't being torn apart. And I just sat there, frozen. I printed out every email, every message. I didn't know what to do, but I knew I couldn't unread what I had seen. My hands were shaking, my mouth was dry. I felt like I'd just stepped off a cliff and was falling with no end in sight. But I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't even tell her what I knew. Instead, I folded the papers, put them in a bag, and hid them deep in the garage. I acted like everything was normal, because I wasn't ready to confront her yet. I needed more. I needed the full truth. That night, she kissed me like nothing had changed, but I had already changed. I wasn't the same man she left behind that morning. Something in me had gone quiet, but sharper. I wasn't guessing anymore. She thought I was still in the dark. But what she didn't know was that I had already made my first move. I had called someone. And from that moment on, she was being watched. After I read those emails and saw how easily she joked about betraying me, something inside me snapped. But not in an angry, out-of-control way. It was quieter than that. Colder, like ice settling in my chest. I wasn't just a husband anymore. I had become something else. Someone watching from the shadows, collecting truth piece by piece. She kept going on with her days like everything was normal. Playing with the kids, cooking dinner, smiling. But now I saw through every movement. Every "I'm going to work" felt like another lie dressed in lipstick, and I played along. I smiled back. I nodded when she talked. I kissed her goodnight. But every time she left the house, I watched the clock. I needed help. Real help. I didn't want to guess anymore. I needed someone who could follow her, track her, dig deeper than I could. So I called a friend of mine, someone I trusted. He was a cop, used to handling sensitive things. I didn't give all the details, just said, "I think something's going on, and I need to know for sure." He listened quietly, then said something that changed everything. "Call Ron." "Ron?" I asked. "Yeah," he said. "Private investigator, quiet, smart. He used to be a detective. He'll get you answers. No mess." I called Ron that same evening. My hands were steady, but inside I felt like I was jumping off a cliff again. He answered with a calm voice. No rush, no emotion, just focus. I told him everything. The emails, the strange mileage, the odd behavior. He didn't interrupt, just took notes. When I finished, he said, "Okay, I'll find out the rest. But you need to stay calm, don't change your routine, don't act suspicious. Keep living like nothing's wrong." That was the hardest part. Acting normal when everything inside you feels like it's on fire. But I did it. I came home, hugged the kids, laughed at dinner, kissed her like nothing was broken, and all the while she had no idea that a storm was coming. The next morning, Ron came over. He walked around her car and installed a GPS tracker so small you'd never know it was there. He also had something else, tiny cameras and sound tools, but we didn't need those yet. He said, "Let's start simple. Let's watch her movements. Let's see where she really goes." Every day she said, "I'm heading to my parents," or "I have a shift at work." Ron followed. And what he found hit harder than any email ever could. Yes, she was driving to her parents' place, but only to drop off the kids. After that, she'd drive to the next town, park outside a small diner. Bob would pull up minutes later. They'd eat lunch like nothing was wrong. Two old lovers playing house in plain sight. And then, like clockwork, they'd head to the same rundown motel off the highway. Cheap, quiet, hidden. They'd stay for hours. Then she'd drive back, pick up the kids, smile, come home like nothing ever happened. Ron sent me the first batch of photos 2 days later. Her car, his car, the two of them walking into the motel, the timestamp, the proof. I stared at the photos for a long time. I kept zooming in, her face, her hand in his, like if I looked long enough I'd find some explanation. But all I found was betrayal, cold and clear. That night, she cuddled up next to me on the couch and asked if I wanted to watch a movie. I said, sure, and I sat there watching the screen, while her secret life played in my head. But it wasn't over. Ron didn't stop there. He kept digging. Who was Bob, really? What was his story? And here's where things took another twist. Bob wasn't just some random guy. He was married, 3 kids, and here's the punch. He worked for his wife's father, a family business. His father-in-law was grooming him to take over the company one day. And now? He was risking it all for sneaky motel sessions and whispered lies. They weren't just cheating. They were both destroying entire families, kids, marriages, legacies, all for a few hours behind closed doors. And the worst part? They didn't seem sorry. Ron said they laughed a lot, smiled, held hands in public, like they weren't afraid of getting caught, like no one would ever know. But I knew everything, and that made me dangerous, not because I wanted revenge, but because I was finally holding the truth in my hands. Now it wasn't just about catching them, it was about what I'd do with the truth. And she had no idea. The next move was already being planned. I thought the worst part was over when I saw those motel photos. I thought the sting would fade once I knew for sure. But the truth doesn't get easier once it's exposed. It gets deeper, dirtier, heavier. I wasn't prepared for how twisted it would become, and yet I couldn't look away. I kept going. I needed to know everything, because this wasn't just about betrayal anymore. This was about understanding how far someone you trusted could really go. Ron worked fast, like he had done this 100 times. He didn't just watch my wife and Bob. He started building a full map of their lives, where they went, who they spoke to, where they stayed. He didn't miss a thing. Every time they met, every route she took, every lie she told me, was now in a file that grew thicker by the day. And with every new page he handed me, something inside me broke just a little more. It wasn't just the motel. That became routine. A stop in the middle of the day while I was at work and our kids were being watched by her parents. A quick lunch, then a cheap room off the highway. And every time, she came home to me like nothing happened. She'd kiss the kids goodnight. She'd ask how my day was. She'd fall asleep next to me like she wasn't carrying 2 lives in her hands. But what really got me wasn't the lies. It was the confidence behind them. Ron told me she had a certain way of smiling when she was with Bob, a light in her eyes, a laugh she didn't show at home anymore. It wasn't just an affair. It was like she had slipped into an entirely different identity, one where she could forget who she was, what she had, and what she was risking. And then, as Ron kept digging, he gave me the next blow. His name's Robert Mason, he said, goes by Bob, married, 3 kids, lives 25 minutes from the motel, VP of sales at his wife's father's company. I froze. Wait, his wife's father's company? Yep, Ron nodded. Family business. Looks like the wife is already handling a lot of operations. Father-in-law's preparing her to take over. So, Bob wasn't just a liar. He was a coward, burning down a life he didn't even build himself. And the more I thought about it, the more it all clicked. This wasn't love. It wasn't passion. It was just 2 people using each other to escape. And in the process, they were pulling everyone else into their wreckage. Me, my kids, Bob's kids, his wife, his father-in-law's trust. All of it. At that point, I knew what most people would expect me to do: explode, scream, throw her out, make it messy. But I didn't. That's not the path I chose. Because the truth was bigger than anger now. It deserved more than yelling. It deserved precision. I sat at my kitchen table and looked through the full report Ron handed me. Dates, photos, license plates, restaurant names. The same seedy motel over and over. There were receipts, patterns, timestamps, cold, clear proof that couldn't be argued or spun. The kind of truth you slam down in a courtroom or shove into a liar's face. But I didn't slam it. I didn't shove it. I sat with it in silence because I had already decided this would not end with rage. This would end with control. I had something neither of them had anymore: time. They thought they were safe. They thought they were clever. But every day they smiled and played their little game. I was 3 steps ahead, building the ending they didn't see coming. That night, I sat on the porch while my wife gave the kids a bath. The wind was soft. The sky was clear. It was a beautiful evening. And in that stillness, I felt a strange kind of peace. Not because I had healed, but because I was ready. The next morning, I visited my lawyer. He looked through the report, took one look at the printed emails, flipped through the photos without saying a word. Then he nodded and said quietly, "You've got more than enough. When do you want to file?" I didn't answer right away. I could have ended it right then. Signed the papers. Called her out, thrown the truth into her face like a blade. But something in me stopped. "There's still one more thing I need to do," I said, because there was one person left in the dark. Someone who deserved to know just as much as I did. Bob's wife. I didn't know her. I'd never met her. But I thought about her often. How many times had she kissed Bob goodbye thinking he was going to work like usual? How many days had she packed school lunches for their kids, unaware that he was spending his afternoons tearing apart her world behind her back? She was just like me, walking around blind while the people she trusted laughed behind her back. So I called Ron again. "I want you to give her a copy of the report," I said. "All of it. The photos, the emails, the full breakdown." Ron paused. "You sure?" "Yeah, but not yet," I said. "I want her to get it on the same day my wife is served the divorce papers." There was silence on the line. Then Ron said, "Got it." That was it. The final move had been set. 2 houses, 2 lies, 2 people pretending nothing was wrong. And on one day, the truth would knock on both their doors. At the same time, they'd never see it coming. Because while they were laughing in hotel rooms, I was building the ending. Once the plan was set, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Clarity, not peace, not closure, just a cold, focused clarity. The kind that comes when you've seen the truth, accepted it, and finally stopped lying to yourself. I wasn't lost anymore. I wasn't broken. I was simply waiting, watching, preparing. My wife had no idea what was coming. None. That's what made it all so surreal. Every day she still kissed me goodbye, she still cooked dinner like nothing had changed. Still smiled when our kids told her stories about school. But to me, it all looked different now. Her smile looked hollow. Her voice sounded distant, like watching someone perform in a role they didn't believe in anymore. But the scariest part? She seemed too calm, too comfortable. She wasn't nervous. She didn't act suspicious. It was almost like she thought she had won. Maybe that's what kept the fire burning in me, knowing she was still walking around our home like I hadn't already caught her. Knowing she believed her lies had worked, that her little affair was still her secret, that Bob was still her escape. She didn't know her world was already cracking underneath her feet. And every time she sent another message, every time she slipped away for another shift or visit to her parents, she was walking deeper into her own trap. Because every move she made was being tracked. Every lie she told was being added to the file. And every time I looked at our kids, I remembered why I couldn't blow up in anger. Why I had to finish this the right way. I wasn't just getting a divorce, I was breaking a cycle. and the way I ended it would be the memory that lived in our children's minds. Not the affair, not the lies, but the way I handled it. That's what mattered most to me. Ron kept updating me, but less often now. The truth was already out. All that was left was the moment of impact. My lawyer had everything ready: the paperwork, the schedule, the delivery plan. We even arranged the process server, who would hand her the documents face-to-face at her workplace, right in front of her coworkers. I didn't want to humiliate her, but I did want her to feel what I had felt. That shock, that instant split between what you thought was real and what actually was. Then came the second part of the plan. Bob's wife. Ron had the full report printed, sealed, and ready for delivery. I told him, drop it at her door the same morning the divorce papers hit my wife's hands. No delays, no early leaks. He asked again if I was sure. I said I'd never been more certain in my life. Because this wasn't just about ending something. This was about showing them both that I saw them, that I knew everything, that I had watched them play with people's lives like toys, and now the game was over. I didn't sleep the night before it happened. I sat in the dark living room, listening to the soft hum of the refrigerator, staring at the clock. My wife was upstairs sound asleep, or maybe not. Maybe she was awake too, texting him under the covers. Either way, it didn't matter. Tomorrow would rewrite everything. The next morning, I woke up early, got dressed, helped the kids get ready for school, sat at the table while she poured herself coffee and told me her plans for the day. She smiled like always, told me she'd be at work until 3. I just nodded. Okay, see you later. She left the house and didn't even notice how quiet I was. At exactly 11:45 a.m., I got a call. It's done, Ron said. She's been served. It happened just outside her office. She froze, didn't say a word. Her coworkers stared. She looked like she didn't even know how to breathe. And Bob's wife? I asked. Delivered at the same time. She answered the door, took the envelope, didn't ask a single question, just stared at the name on the cover. Then stepped back inside and closed the door without a word. I didn't reply right away. I just sat there, phone in hand, heart pounding. The truth had finally landed. I wondered what she was doing at that moment. My wife. Was she reading the papers alone at her desk? Panicking? Crying? Laughing it off with Bob? Or was she realizing for the first time that she wasn't in control anymore? A few hours later, I picked up the kids from school. We got ice cream, laughed about something silly, and drove home. It felt normal, peaceful, even. But in the back of my mind, I knew a storm was waiting behind our front door. When we walked in, the house was empty. She hadn't come home yet. I fed the kids, helped them with homework, and waited. Finally, the door opened. She stepped inside slowly, pale, eyes red. Her hands trembled slightly as she set her purse down. For the first time in weeks, she looked like someone who didn't know what to say. She opened her mouth to speak, but I raised my hand. "Not now," I said. "We'll talk, but not in front of them." She nodded silently. For the rest of the night, we played pretend for the kids, like nothing had happened. But behind every glance, every breath, was a war of words waiting to erupt. And somewhere, not far away, Bob's house was burning too. I didn't need to see it to know, because I had finally dropped the truth in both places. And now, all that was left was watching it unfold. After the papers were served, the entire house felt heavier. Every corner, every hallway, every room carried a silence that wasn't just quiet. It was loaded. She walked through the door that evening like a ghost, like a person who had seen her reflection for the first time and didn't like what looked back. Her face was drained of color. Her steps were slow. She didn't even look me in the eyes. But she didn't speak. She didn't ask why. She didn't defend herself, because deep down, she already knew I knew. And for the first time, I think she realized I had known for a long time. She tried to move around the kitchen like normal, but her hands fumbled. She dropped a glass. She apologized without looking up. The kids were watching, confused, but not enough to question it out loud. Kids can sense when something's wrong, even if no one says a word. And that night, the tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Once they were asleep, I sat on the couch, and she stood near the hallway like she didn't know whether to run or beg. I could feel her wanting to speak, words pushing up against her lips. Explanations, excuses, maybe even lies, but I gave her nothing, just silence. I wanted her to sit in it, to feel what I had felt every night she said she was working late, every time she left the house and came home with someone else's scent on her skin. I wanted her to feel the weight of truth without me having to say a word. Eventually, she whispered, "Can we talk?" I nodded once. Cold, controlled. She sat down slowly, folding her hands like a child waiting for punishment. And then, for the first time, she asked, "How long have you known?" I looked straight at her. "Long enough to stop believing anything you say." She flinched, just barely, but I saw it. She tried to explain herself, said she never meant for it to go this far, that she was lost, confused, lonely. The usual words people grab when they don't want to call their choices what they really are. Selfish, cowardly, destructive. I didn't yell, I didn't accuse, I didn't ask questions, because I already had the answers. I let her talk. I let her fill the room with broken reasons. But I didn't engage, I didn't argue, because I had already made peace with the truth. I told her the divorce was happening, that there was nothing to fix, that she had made her choices, and I had made mine. And the only thing we'd ever speak about from this point on was the kids. She cried, quietly, the kind of cry that sounds more like regret than sadness. Not because she lost me, but because she lost the comfort of a man who still believed in her. I stood up, left her sitting on that couch, and went to bed. And that night, I slept better than I had in months. But the story didn't end there. The next few days were strange. She tiptoed around the house trying to act like things were normal. She made breakfast, packed school lunches, folded laundry. But her hands were slower now. Her eyes were dull. It was like the weight of what she'd done was finally settling in. She didn't ask how I knew. She didn't bring up Bob. She didn't even try to deny it. Maybe because she sensed it wasn't just me who had turned against her. It was her own reflection. The woman she thought she was didn't exist anymore. Not in this house. Not in this story. And then one morning, I got a call from Ron. "Just thought you should know. Bob's wife packed his stuff and kicked him out last night." I didn't respond right away, just let that information hang in the air. "He didn't even try to fight back," Ron added. "Didn't deny it, didn't apologize, just left." I asked, "Where'd he go?" "Not sure, hotel maybe, doesn't matter." He was right, it didn't matter anymore. Bob had already lost everything, his wife, his kids, his career, because word was getting around that his father-in-law wasn't just disappointed, he was furious. And as for my wife, she was still under my roof, but not for long. She'd be moving out soon, the papers were in motion. Custody discussions had started. Everything was happening quietly, but with precision. The power she once had, the ability to lie to my face, to control the narrative, to walk around like she was untouchable, was gone. Completely. And I didn't have to raise my voice once. People think revenge has to be loud, explosive, messy, But real justice is quiet, it's surgical. It doesn't come with fireworks. It comes with silence that crushes everything it touches. I didn't burn her world down. I just walked away and let the truth do it for me. And the truth? It's still echoing through both of their lives. The weeks that followed felt like walking through a burned-down house. The walls were still standing, but everything inside had changed. The silence didn't sting anymore, it just settled. She moved out quietly, without a scene. No final argument, no dramatic goodbye. Just a few packed boxes and a half-hearted "I'm sorry" that didn't reach the place in me that had already shut the door. The kids asked questions, of course. They felt the shift. They noticed the missing shoes at the front door, the empty space in the closet, the fact that we didn't eat dinner at the same table anymore. But I gave them answers they could understand. Simple truths, softened by love. I didn't poison their minds. I didn't use them as weapons. I kept them safe. That was always the point of all this, to protect them from the kind of chaos I had grown up with. And they adjusted. Slowly, but surely. Kids are stronger than we think. They see more than we tell them, feel more than we admit. I knew one day they'd put the pieces together. I just hoped that when they did, they'd remember how I handled it. Not with rage, not with revenge, but with restraint, with clarity, with quiet control. As for her, she tried to reach out a few times, not directly, not in big ways, a message here, a "hope you're okay there." Once, she even asked if we could talk. Not about the kids, but about us. She said she missed the way things used to be. Said she didn't realize what she had until it was gone. But I never replied. Because what she really missed wasn't me. It was the comfort of having someone who still believed in her. That version of me no longer existed. She killed him the moment she looked me in the eye and lied, again and again, without blinking. She had made her choice, and I had made mine. But what surprised me most was what happened with Bob. After the day of reckoning, he vanished. Not completely, but enough to fade into the background. Ron said he packed up and moved out of state. Started over somewhere far away. Left behind the mess he created like it was someone else's trash. His wife didn't collapse. She rose, took over the family business, focused on her children, became sharper, stronger, harder to break. We never spoke, never needed to, but through Ron, I knew she was okay. She did what I did, picked up the broken pieces, quietly rebuilt, and kept walking. Ron eventually closed the file. The job was done. No loose ends, no missing answers. He never asked for credit. Never tried to involve himself in the aftermath. He simply handed me the truth and disappeared. I never saw him again, but I never forgot what he gave me. He didn't just catch a cheater. He gave me back control in a world that had gone upside down. And yet, even after all that, there were nights when I sat in the quiet and asked myself, how did it get here? How did a marriage that once felt so real turn into a performance? How did someone I trusted with my whole heart become a stranger I couldn't even stand next to? I think the answer is simpler than we want it to be. Sometimes people change. Sometimes they grow weak. Sometimes the love dies. And instead of telling you the truth, they start writing lies into your life, sentence by sentence, until you no longer recognize the story you're in. But that's the beauty of truth. It doesn't need to scream to be heard, it just waits. And when it finally shows up, it changes everything. Years passed. The pain faded, but the lessons never did. I didn't become bitter. I didn't turn cold. I became clear. I learned to watch people's actions, not just their words. I learned how silence can be more powerful than screaming. And I learned that walking away isn't weakness. It's the strongest thing you can do when someone no longer deserves to stand beside you. One day, not long ago, my daughter, now older, wiser, more observant, sat across from me at the kitchen table and asked, "Dad, did you ever want to get back at Mom for what she did?" I paused for a second. Not because I didn't know the answer, but because I wanted her to feel the weight of it. "No," I said. I didn't want to hurt her. I just wanted her to know I knew, and I wanted to be free. She looked at me for a long time, then gave a small nod, like something in her finally clicked. That's when I knew I had done it right. I had ended the story without turning into the villain. I had chosen the quiet road, the one most people don't take, and I had shown my children what true strength looks like. Not loud, not violent, just steady, just sure. Now I live differently. I don't carry the past like a weight, I carry it like armor. I trust slower, I watch closer. And most of all, I protect my peace like it's the last thing I own. Because once you've walked through fire and come out standing, you stop fearing the smoke. So, to anyone out there, anyone who feels like something's wrong, like the math isn't adding up, like the smile they're seeing doesn't match the story they're being told, trust that feeling. Follow it. Because the truth may hurt, but it will also set you free. And when it does, you won't need revenge, you'll just need to walk away. If this story hit you deep, if it made you think twice about trust, silence, or the power of walking away, then don't just scroll past. Subscribe to Mass Reddit Story for more real, raw, and gripping stories just like this one. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who might be sitting in silence waiting for the truth to show up. Because here, we don't just tell stories. We reveal the parts people try to hide. Stay strong, stay sharp, and I'll see you in the next story.